Energy and Water Development Subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee will come to order. I want to thank all of our witnesses today. I think I'll start by deferring to the Vice Chair of the Appropriations Committee and the ranking member of this subcommittee, my colleague, Senator Murray. She'd like to make some comments, and then I'll have a few comments to make, and then we'll hear from our witnesses.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair Kennedy. Good morning to all of you. Acting Assistant Secretary Forsgren, Lieutenant General Graham, Acting Assistant Secretary Cameron, thank you all for being here today. We are here today to talk about the fiscal year 2026 budget requests for the Army Corps of Engineers and Bureau of Reclamation. Whether they know it or not, every American depends on the work of these agencies every day, and that's especially true for folks in my home state of Washington and anyone who lives out west or near a major waterway. The Army Corps keeps our ports running smoothly, which is critical for our economy and our trade. They manage critical infrastructure like our dams, levees, and bridges, and protect communities from dangerous floods. And they support our ecosystems and help protect keystone species like salmon, among a lot else. Bureau of Reclamation brings water to over 30 million people and irrigation to 1 in 5 farmers out west. It generates power to keep the lights on in millions of homes, and it protects farmers and communities against drought, to name a few things. It is critical work that we cannot afford to shortchange. But President Trump's budget request shows yet again that he has no clue and no problem gutting essential water investments our communities rely on to feed their families and stay safe from flooding. The President's budget requests a nearly 25% cut for the Corps of Engineers. And when you consider the fact that House Republicans' last year-long CR already cut funding for the Corps, we are really talking about a nearly 30% cut for the Corps relative to the funding level just a few months ago. This request, for example, falls $1.7 billion below the target level for the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, leaving more than half of that target funding on the table. Not only that, you include just $60 million for donor and energy ports like my home state, when our bipartisan Water Resources Development Act has specifically instructed that there be $417 million for these ports. And President Trump's budget also proposes a massive 30% cut for the Bureau of Reclamation. These cuts would end critical work on flood prevention, port dredging, basic management of our water resources, and more. This is flat out dangerous, and Trump's budget is dead on arrival here in Congress as far as I'm concerned. But we have a lot more to cover beyond the budget request, because as we sit here today, the President seems bent on doing everything he can to undermine the work of the Corps and the Bureau with reckless staffing cuts, and by brazenly and corruptly politicizing the allocation of funding and control over our nation's water resources. In the span of just a few months, DOGE has pushed out a quarter of the Bureau staff without any discernible strategy. This mass exodus of talent puts the Bureau's mission at serious risk. The last thing we need are fewer dam safety inspections or big delays on repair projects. And when it comes to politicization, the President spent much of his first few weeks in office making up conspiracies about California's water supply as wildfires raged, vowing to block disaster relief, picking fights with the state's governor, and against the advice of all experts, ultimately ordered the Corps to open 2 dams and unleash billions of gallons of water on California's Central Valley. That move, predictably, did absolutely nothing to stop the fires and came nowhere near LA. But it did waste huge quantities of precious water and nearly flooded, yes, flooded local farms and communities and put agriculture at risk. It was one of the first instances we saw of this President meddling in the Corps' work and overruling experts to chase some fixation, but it was not the last. A few weeks ago, the Corps released plans detailing how it is allocating funding for construction projects in FY25. Now, usually that is something We decide here in Congress. But that decision-making power was turned over to Trump administration with the House Republicans' year-long slush fund CR. That was one of the many reasons I voted against that bill, and it's a reminder to all of us about why we do need strong bipartisan spending bills. So instead of allocating construction funding to projects that were selected in both our bipartisan Senate Appropriations bill and the Republican House bill, and giving funding to red and blue states roughly evenly as both bills did, this administration decided to steal hundreds of millions of dollars in critical investments from blue states and steer those investments instead to red states and the president's political allies. Every single construction project in California, the most populous state in the country, was zeroed out. We're talking about funds that protect people in one of the most flood-prone states in the country, gone. And Trump completely defunded construction at the Howard Handsome Dam in Washington State, leaving a literal hole in the ground. This is a shovel-ready project that will ensure water reliability for over 1 million people in the region. And of course, the administration's budget proposal does not fund those projects in FY2026 either. All told, 2/3 of the Army construction funding is now headed to red states for no reason other than Trump wanting to punish political enemies and reward friends. This is not how these projects should work, ever, in the United States of America. Lieutenant General Graham, a few weeks ago, the Assistant Secretary's office was asked in a House hearing about this nakedly partisan allocation. That official didn't even try to justify it. Instead, they said, tellingly, the buck stopped with OMB. So there it is. Trump and Russ Vought called the shots and defunded those projects on their own. Now, I shouldn't need to tell anyone here, floods hit red states and blue states alike. Droughts hammer farmers in rural districts and strain families in big ways. Every single American, in one way or another, depends on our ports being well maintained to get the basic goods we count on and keep our economy humming. And everyone should be able to trust their government will decide how to invest resources and protect them from threats like flooding, drought, and wildfire, based on science, based on engineering. That is what's best for people, not on a president's desire for retribution. So I believe Congress needs to reject these reckless cuts that you are requesting for the Corps and the Bureau, and we need to see an end to this egregious politicization of these kinds of resources. This is not a path we can afford to continue going down as a country. So I will just give a warning to all of my colleagues. Once again, may not have been your state this time, but you all know full well just how fickle the president can be. We should not leave this authority with him. We do need to come together and write our own strong bipartisan bill. Thank you.
Put Senator Murray down as doubtful, gentlemen, about your budget. I look at your budget, a decrease of 23%. That's $2 billion from fiscal year 25 enacted. A reduction in funding for the Mississippi River and tributaries account of 29%. That's $106 million. A reduction in funding for the operation and maintenance account of 28%, $1.6 billion. The budget doesn't propose any use, none, of the Inland Waterways Trust Fund receipts, and proposes to use only $1.7 billion from the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. That's about $1.7 billion less than the congressional target. I was reading the other night, I don't remember the exact figures, but scientists estimate that there are 2 to 3 trillion galaxies in the universe. And in not a single one of those galaxies, is this Congress or any Congress likely to approve this budget? I mean, that's just a fact. Now, I understand the way it works, that you gentlemen didn't write this budget. Hopefully you had input, but you didn't write it. It came from OMB. And I also understand that Congress has never accepted a president's budget, any president's budget, and just enacted it without changes. That's never happened in the history of ever. So I get all that. But having said that, this is obviously not acceptable, and I hope we can talk about that frankly today. I don't know what's going to happen this year in terms of a budget. I'm an optimist, but I am a paranoid optimist. Last year, I watched Senator Murray and Senator Collins work really, really hard to put together 12 bills. I watched the entire Appropriations Committee work very, very hard to approve those bills. And a lot of us had to, on both sides of the aisle, had to swallow things that we almost choked on. But we wanted to put together a budget because that's our first job. I know you hear a lot about the Senate being in the personnel business, and we are, but really our job is to put together a budget. And we did. And my friend Senator Schumer refused to bring any of those bills to the floor. Not one. None. Zero. My goal was to see the bills come to the floor and then have an open amendment process where colleagues of mine, both on and off the Appropriations Committee, could weigh in. But Senator Schumer chose not to. That's just a fact. I don't know what's going to happen this year. Under President Biden, I want to try to be as impartial as I can be in making this statement, but I think it's accurate. Under President Biden, and presidents set the tone in Washington. Under President Biden, the general discussion was who needs to pay more in taxes, okay? Under President Trump, it's clear to me at this juncture that the discussion has changed. The discussion is now, what the hell happened to the money? And that's a healthy discussion to have. But when it comes to the Corps of Engineers, and before I get there, and that leads me to believe that we may not have a budget this year. I just don't know if we can come together on it. It's always a challenge, but it's clear to me that at least on my side of the aisle, we are expecting to reduce the amount of spending strategically, but reduce it. And I know some of my friends in the Senate are going to have a problem with that, but that's the reality. Now, when it comes to the Corps of Engineers, that is slightly different because there is bipartisan support for the important work that you do. It doesn't mean that we can't find savings, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't make changes, and we're going to talk about that today. But a 23% decrease, I think Senator Murray, by her calculations, it might be a 30%. That's just not acceptable. So help us work through this and come up with a plan that looks like somebody designed it on purpose, which is not this one. Let me make one other comment, and then I want to hear from you gentlemen. Look, I know you have a tough job. I get that. Every senator, every congressperson wants their projects, and they want them first, and they want them yesterday. I get that. and you have finite resources, we all do. And you have a lot of smart people working at your agency, but you could use more. I get all of that. So I don't want to, I'm spending a few minutes on this because I appreciate the job that you do. I do. But we've got to do better. Our estimates on the cost of projects are just too wide of the mark. I mean, I could give you, I'm not going to do it, but I could give you example after example after example. And we're not talking 10% off or 20% off or 30% off. We're talking squillions of dollars off. Now, I understand inflation, but it doesn't account for this. We also have to figure out a way, you do, frankly, to bring these projects in on time, or at least closer to the estimated time. If you did in the private sector in terms of your delays and your, I'll say our cost overruns, if you did that in the private sector, you would be out of business. Nobody would hire you. And the penalties from not completing the project on time would put you out of business. We just got to do better. It's just that simple. And I hope today you'll talk about how you're planning on doing that. Let's start with us today. I guess I should introduce our colleagues who are here today. Acting Secretary D. Lee Forsgren. He was appointed Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army Civil Works on March 31st. Welcome. Lieutenant General Williams H. Butch Graham, Jr. You're the 56th Chief of Engineers and Commanding General of the United States Army Corps of Engineers. You assumed your duties on September 13th of 2024. Welcome. Acting Assistant Secretary for Water and Science, Scott Cameron. Secretary Cameron has been in this role since January 21st. We welcome all of you. The floor is yours. Why don't we start with Secretary Forsgren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Murray, other members of the subcommittee, it's an honor to be here this morning. Before I go too deep, I wanted to point out that on Saturday, the Army turns 250, and the Army Corps of Engineers turns 250 on Monday. So the Corps of Engineers and the Civil Works program have been around since the dawn of the country. And I could not be prouder to be working with the professionals that every day take that legacy forward. I would like to ask that my entire statement be placed in the record, but a couple of just points, Mr. Chairman. We couldn't agree with you more that we need to find ways to bring projects in on time, and as much closer to being on budget. There are a myriad of reasons for that, but pointing fingers isn't going to solve the problem. We are committed to trying to do that. There's probably not a single silver bullet that would have fixed that problem, or it would have been fixed decades ago. So we've got to find a number of ways to work the problem to make our projects be more cost effective and faster. That said, General Graham works every day on that process. We are committed as Secretary of the Army's office and in the administration to support those functions in all of our interest, and it's in the national interest to do so. And with that, I would just welcome any questions that you all might have.
Thanks. Chairman Kennedy, Ranking Member Murray, I'm honored to testify before you today in regard to the President's fiscal year 2026 budget for the United States Army Corps of Engineers. As we've heard this morning, the Corps Civil Works program is absolutely key to the nation's commercial navigation, flood and storm damage reduction, and aquatic ecosystem restoration missions, amongst others. To highlight a couple of those, the navigation program underpins the entire national economy, ensuring that commodities can move reliably and efficiently. Our flood and storm damage reduction program maintains over 746 dams and over 13,000 miles of federal levees that protect over 200 billion in flood damages avoided, averaged over a 10-year period. The 2026 President's budget is performance-based and focused on high-performing projects and programs, and the Corps uses a targeted approach to invest in the water resources that benefit the nation now and into the future. Chairman, we absolutely take you seriously on we've got to improve delivery. Our objective every day is to safely deliver quality projects on schedule and within budget. That's our objective. It's not a goal, it's our objective. To this end, we've improved our ability to measure our on-schedule performance. And right now, when I checked this morning, we're at 81%. That's a low B, and that's unacceptable. This performance, as you've discussed, is influenced by factors that we can't control, such as inflation, but there's a bunch that we can control, and I'd like to highlight three, and then we're organizing the Corps around these three. First and foremost, we've got to get the engineering right. And we've got to get the engineering right before we ask for authorization. It's like coming up to the authorizing committees and saying, I need a house, and I put a price tag on it, but I didn't tell them I need a 4-bedroom house with a 2-car garage. Right? We've asked for authority to build things where we haven't had the scope nailed down fully. And in the engineering terms, the design needs to be matured at least to the 35% design before we ask for the authority to build it. And that's my commitment to you. I'll sign no chief's report unless the engineering is advanced to the 35% design. Second thing we need to do is we've got to get the project management right. And Chairman, that's what you said. We've got to make good schedules that have contingency to deal with the unknowns. And then we've got to stick to those schedules with a great sense of urgency. And the last one is we've got to get the team that's building this right. We're striving every day to bring in the right team members or the right contractors to augment our team to build these facilities. So the path to successful delivery is clear. Plan projects thoroughly, build them rapidly with predictable funding, and have the right team of master craftsmen to deliver them. And I look forward to working with this committee to stay on that path, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Chairman Kennedy, Ranking Member Murray, and Senator Hyde-Smith for the opportunity to testify to you today on behalf of the President's 2026 budget request for the Bureau of Reclamation. Reclamation's projects and programs serve as the water and power infrastructure backbone of the American West, constituting an important driver of economic growth in hundreds of basins throughout the 17 western states. Reclamation manages water for agriculture, hydropower production, municipal and industrial use, and provides flood control and recreation for 90 million people. Recreation's activities support economic activity valued at $64 billion and support approximately 500,000 jobs. Reclamation delivers 10 trillion gallons of water to millions of people each year and provides water for irrigation of 10 million acres of farmland, which yields approximately 25% of a nation's fruit and nut crops and 60% of the vegetable harvest. Water and related resources account ensures reliable water and energy for agriculture, industry, cities, and rural populations, foundational pillars of the President's America First agenda. These investments deliver tangible results aligned with executive orders promoting energy dominance and streamlined governance. The Central Valley Project in California maintains and modernizes facilities and increases water conveyance to Southern California and the San Joaquin Valley. The Klamath Project in Oregon and California ensures operational flexibility for irrigation deliveries and natural resource management. The Bureau of Reclamation's work on the Colorado River directly advances presidential priorities of securing American energy, ensuring domestic water supply, and asserting sovereignty in international negotiations with Mexico. Through the Lower Colorado River Operations Program, including implementation of the drought contingency plans and binational agreements with Mexico, Reclamation enhances water supply reliability for U.S. communities while acknowledging our treaty obligations. We're working very closely with the 7 Colorado River Basin states at this point, because a number of key agreements expire in 2026. And we are working very hard to find a 7-state solution that the 7 governors will find agreeable to manage the water resources, increasingly scarce water resources of the Colorado Basin for the next 20 years. Thank you for your time. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'm going to listen for a while. My guess is Senator Murray has some questions.
I do.
The floor is yours, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for your testimony this morning. General Graham, let me start with you. The Howard Hanson Dam project is to address dam safety issues, provide additional water supply, and meet the Corps' legal obligations by opening up miles of critical salmon habitat. Would you agree with that assessment?
Ranking Member Murray, yes. The Howard Hanson project right now is the one we're working on. Is primarily a fish passage to figure out how to get small juvenile fish off of a high head dam, which we've never done before. But it's part of a larger project that provides, as you said, critical flood risk management and water supply protection to the southeastern part of Seattle.
Is it true that the $500 million the project was slated to receive in the FY25 budget, as well as in the House and Senate bills, would have allowed construction to proceed on schedule?
Yes, that would have allowed us to keep on our current construction schedule.
Yeah, well, it's clear that the Howard Hanson Dam project is shovel-ready, and despite that, the Trump administration seems ready to walk away from that. Everyone needs to understand turning the Army Corps into a political slush fund sets a very dangerous precedent. In fact, in testimony before the House, a top Army Corps official very explicitly stated that OMB, not the experts at the Corps, called the final shots here. Section 107 has been passed on a bipartisan basis in our bill for the last 5 years and makes clear that funding should be allocated only to projects determined to be eligible by the Chief of Engineers. It appears that OMB handed the Corps the final spend plan without consulting you as required. The law needs to be followed, so I'm going to ask you, yes or no, were you provided a final spend plan so you could determine all the projects listed were eligible?
Ranking Member Murray, we provided our best technical recommendation to the Assistant Secretary.
Senator Murray, we provided input through the president's budget process on that spending plan. We provided technical input on that spending plan.
So that you could prove that all of them were eligible, correct?
I don't think eligibility was ever the question.
Okay, well, that's really troubling and really an example of this administration that just somehow thinks they're above the law. I mean, I got news for Russ Vought. The law applies to him the same as for everybody else, so that is very troubling. Mr. Forsgren, let me go back to you. I consistently hear from ports and harbors across the country about how they rely on the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund to maintain critical port infrastructure. Now, in April, the administration issued an executive order acknowledging that cargo carriers divert goods to Canada from our donor ports, Seattle, Tacoma, others, to avoid the harbor maintenance tax. That's really an unfair practice. I've spoken about it for years. But this year's budget request does not even attempt to meet the worded targets for HMTF donor port funding. And even more troubling, in the skinny budget, this administration tries to tell Congress that it is not a federal responsibility to provide those dollars, even though that is one of the explicit purposes Congress passed into law. That is really unacceptable. Donor port funding has already been determined through the WRDA process and our annual appropriations bills for years. It is extremely frustrating that I have to continue raising this issue year after year to get our ports the fair share they are entitled to under the law. Will you commit to ensure that donor ports like Seattle and Tacoma will receive their full fair share of the HMTF dollars as Congress intended?
Senator, I will commit to working to ensure that the Harbor Maintenance Fund is used to the maximum extent it possibly can. We understand the Harbor Maintenance Fund is the backbone of the commercial navigation system
Yes.
for our ports. And that system has to be able to be functional across all the nation's ports, but I will say there needs to be a primary focus on the principal federal responsibility, which is the mainline channels. But I will commit to working with you to fully utilize the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund as it is passed into law.
Okay, well, let me ask you one more question in my last few seconds. The Columbia River provides habitat for salmon, endangered species. It also irrigates 600,000 acres of farmland and serves as a marine highway. It also provides electricity to the entire Northwest. And critically, it has a transboundary waterway shared with Canada. So the State Department has been leading efforts to negotiate a modernized Columbia River Treaty, which is really critical to providing certainty for people and businesses across our region who rely on the Columbia River. But this administration appears committed to doing everything they can now to tank our relationship with our friend and neighbor Canada. And the key to getting this agreement in place and all the hard work that has gone into it was collaboration between all the stakeholders. It is really imperative that as the interim agreement is executed, that collaboration continues. So, Mr. Cameron, Mr. Forsgren, will you commit to ensuring that the Corps and the Reclamation continue to communicate with tribes and the Mid-Sea public utilities on the operation of the Columbia River system?
Senator Murray, we certainly we are committed to the treaty, as is reflected in the budget, and we are committed to continuing the dialogue necessary to operate and maintain the system.
Mr. Cameron.
Yes, Senator. I've already had multiple meetings with stakeholders from throughout the Columbia River Basin, so we're including tribes. So, conversations are ongoing.
Okay, this is really a critical treaty. We need to get it enacted. And again, Canada is not our enemy there. We need to include them. Thank you.
Senator Hyde Smith.
Thank you, Chairman Kennedy, and thank you, panel, for being here today. I certainly appreciate your willingness to serve in the capacities that you do. My first question is going to be on the Yazoo Backwater Area Management Project, which is no surprise to anyone. I've been working on this for many, many years. And Secretary Forsgren and General Graham, as you know, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Mississippi Valley Division signed a record of decision for the new Yazoo Backwater Area Management Plan earlier this year, which I, with thousands of Mississippi, were thrilled about this milestone. And I'd also like to express my gratitude to the Corps for the $32 million allocated to the project in your FY25 work plan that was announced last month. Of those funds, $15 million will be used for pre-construction engineering and design work, $15 million for mitigation to protect wildlife and wildlife habitat, and $2 million for mitigation infrastructure construction. We're certainly moving in the right direction now and providing adequate flood protection for area residents, something that was promised literally decades ago. The findings outlined in the project's final environmental impact statement stated in addition to reducing catastrophic flooding, that project implementation would not convert any wetlands to wetlands. Wildlife and habitat will be better off for the project. Aquatic resources will be better off with this project. Water quality will be better off with this project. Everything is positive here. Everything will be better off. Secretary Forsgren and General Graham, would you agree with the findings detailed in the final EIS?
Yes, Senator. We are committed to that project. I will say, put my personal hat on. I sat in your office about 5 years ago when we discussed the outlines of the beginnings of that project and how we might move forward. And I was thrilled to see that it, is moving forward. So when I was sworn in, I was happy, to be honest, that not to have to take up that the project had moved forward in that interim period. The short answer is we're committed to the project. We're committed to moving forward. I believe the findings are accurate. That doesn't mean the Corps still has a lot to do as the engineering and how we finalize exactly what that project needs to look like, but we're talking about deciding on which crown molding we're going to put in the house. We're not deciding on to build the house in this case.
Senator, I don't have much to add. We're thrilled, and we're excited to see this moving forward. Our commitment to you is, as we go into pre-construction engineering and design, is let's advance that design now to include the mitigation, that, you know, the extent of that, so that when we come forward, this is how much this is going to cost, that we give you an accurate cost estimate. That's our commitment to you.
Wonderful. And the total capability for this project for the fiscal year 2026 is truly significant. I get that. I'm shocked by that, nor does it scare me away, because it's something we have to do. Should Congress provide robust funding for the Yazoo Backwater Area Management Project in this year's appropriations process, how confident are you that the Corps will be able to put that to good use?
Senator, you raise a very pertinent issue in the context of the Yazoo project that's true across that, and that is how the Corps' capabilities set against, you know, their capabilities on any given project versus the totality of the project. And you really can't take the capabilities for a project without looking at the totality of the region, of the district, and of the nation in total. So with that said, I will defer to General Graham to talk specifically, but I think we're still trying to figure out how our capabilities match against the resources.
And Senator, that's it. With the work plan funding, with what we're, the engineering pre-construction work we're doing right now, I don't really know what our capability is concretely for 26. We owe you that, and our commitment to you is to work with you in your office as the months progress and share what we do know with you on the efficacy of our current cost estimate.
Great. Well, I certainly want us all to get to yes, and I'm willing to help us get there, whatever it takes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Britt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for appearing before this committee today. I want to start by telling you how much I appreciate your attention and that of Deputy Assistant Secretary Stacey Brown to the needs of Alabama's inland waterway system. Thank you for getting on the phone with me. Thank you for helping us work through this. As you all know, we had catastrophic failures this year, whether it be at Demopolis, whether it be in Holt, whether it be in Wilson. When these things happen, it disrupts entire economies. I mean, we saw it negatively impact our ag industry, negatively impact our energy industry, negatively impact our aerospace industry. So I am very grateful for your attention to those matters and helping us get them back up and moving. That being said, I'm also pleased to see that the work plan budgeted for repairs in Demopolis and Holt, and also appreciate what you're doing in Coffeyville as well. I think it is imperative that we actually fix these things before they become a problem. And so that's my question to you. How do we get to the place where we are doing the type of maintenance that is needed to prevent these failures, you know, on time, on budget, but ahead of when they actually occur? And so, Mr. Forsgren, let's start with you. I know there's a substantial O&M backlog. I know when you're looking at all of the different needs across the nation, how do we make sure that we're appropriately taking care of our inland waterways system and not playing catch up, but doing these things on the front end?
Senator, the Corps basically does all of its O&M budgeting and proposals against the engineering and risk assessed, you know, for risk of, when I mean risk of failure. And we prioritize those things with the highest risk of failure. Could there always be more resources in O&M? Absolutely. But we all live in a constrained environment. But the Corps in fact, they do a very good job of assessing the damage, assessing the potential risks associated with failure when they look at O&M. Have we been absolutely perfect with that? No,
Is it an issue of funding? Is it an issue of front-loading that so that you have that? Or is it an issue of manpower? Like, what gets us to these points?
I think it's principally an issue of funding is too easy a way to say, it's
Okay.
easier. If we had more money and more people, of course, we could do better.
Absolutely.
But I think it's more of a case of how do we really focus what we're doing and with the resources we do have?
Well, let's continue this conversation. I have limited time here, but I want us to actually dig down on this. There is no reason for us to get to the point of failure. We should be taking a look and making responsible upgrades and maintenance on the front end so that we don't get to this point. So I want to talk to you all about that in a real way.
Absolutely.
So that we can have a tangible pathway forward. I want to talk about a project that I think has worked well. And Lieutenant General Graham, I'd like to ask you about the Mobile Harbor Deepening Project. Look, we've taken it down to 50 feet. It's going to be the deepest deepwater port there, right there in the Gulf. This is a project that has been on time and under budget. Talk to me about how you achieved that.
In the few minutes we have left on Black Warrior 10 Tom, we are not providing a reliable transportation system that your constituents can count on. We own that. I stood down at the sill in Demopolis, and I had all of our smart engineers from around the nation there, and we were trying to figure out how could we have seen that sill might give way.
I appreciate you taking ownership of that. Thank you.
We absolutely own that. They got really inventive up at Holt so that we could get that back in operation with the temporary fix, and then we have the long-term fix in hand. But we absolutely are not providing a reliable system, and that's our commitment to
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
On Mobile Harbor, this is going to be a great year on the deepening. The key to success, stable, predictable funding.
Okay, stable, predictable funding. I only have a few minutes left, so let me talk about something there. In the WRDA bill this year, WRDA 2024, I included a provision in there that said no less than 70% of suitable dredge material would be used for beneficial use. This is critically important. We can do two things. We can make sure that we have the economic engine that is the Port of Mobile, and we responsibly preserve our natural resources. It is imperative. This dredge material could be used for habitat restoration, for beach nourishment, for wetland creation, and I am not going to move off of that. So we have to make sure that we are good stewards of the natural resources that the good Lord has given us, and we can do both of these things at the same time. I am out of time, but listen, it is not acceptable that we have delays in this. I want to make sure that we figure out a pathway to get these answers quickly, and that we can speed up the process. It is imperative that we do so both on the permitting side and taking a look at some of these overburdensome reviews. So I know that I am out of time, but do you have just a comment on how we can do that quickly? Because
Short answer
the chairman's being gracious to me here.
Senator, we are committed to beneficial use of dredge materials as probably the preferred method to dispose of our dredging material. And we are committed both on the permitting side and on the project design side to maximize the use of beneficially used materials.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Senator, what we're doing down at Dolphin Island is,
sir.
I think, exemplary.
Yes, sir.
What Mobile's district doing with a programmatic agreement so that we can get that all up front on the permitting. And that is, we treat the clean sand, clean silt as a resource for the environment and in terms of the beach protection as well. So
okay. Well, let's work together. I am absolutely not going to back off of this and believe that we can do both things. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for giving me this time. Also, just a point of personal privilege real quick. I am looking forward to the confirmation of Adam Tell. We were baby staffers together, brand new in Richard Shelby's office. Got to know each other. I've never met a bigger Mississippi State fan in my life, by the way. So you all get ready for that. But worked with he and his wife Shelby through the years. He is a true public servant. He is a tireless advocate for America's infrastructure. I mean, in addition to that, he happens to be an Alabama native. And so I know he knows firsthand the needs and how significant the inland waterways system is for our country's continued growth. So I am excited about getting him confirmed and getting him in place and having him in front of this committee, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Acting Assistant Secretary Forsgren, it is good to see you here today. I'd like to talk about the Tribal Partnership Program, or TPP. It's been a very successful program in my state of South Dakota. This program provides federal support to tribes for projects related to environmental restoration, flood mitigation, and protection of natural and cultural resources. The Water Resources Development Act, or WRDA, of 2024 made the Tribal Partnership Program permanent, allowing the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to continue supporting this important work. Do you believe the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers currently has the resources necessary to effectively continue executing projects under the TPP?
Yes, Senator, I believe we do. There are many ways that we can reach the goals of that partnership to work with tribes to enhance their water infrastructure.
Good. Look, I think these tribal nations really do want to have an ongoing and working relationship. These are areas that can really improve the economic opportunities and literally the safety in those areas as well. Consultation is critical. They appreciate not only the idea that we can work together, but the clear evidence is when we actually ask their opinion, we get their feedback, and then we work in a consultative way to get a project done.
We commit to continuing the tribal consultations.
Thank you, sir. Lieutenant General Graham, thank you, first of all, for being here today, and thank you for your service to our country. Nearly 1 year ago, southeastern South Dakota experienced some catastrophic flooding. Record rainfall destroyed numerous homes and caused significant damage to public infrastructure. General Graham, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers plays a vital role in flood response efforts. Each year, Congress allocates funds specifically for disaster-related flood work, enabling the Corps to support preparedness, response, and recovery measures. In your view, does the Corps currently have the capability to adequately prepare local communities for large-scale flooding?
So, Senator, on the emergency response side, on Public Law 8499, I believe we do. Working closely to use those authorities and those appropriations to the maximum extent possible. We've been very aggressive with that over the last couple of years. And then working with the Federal Emergency Management Agency under the Stafford Act, we can bring in the expertise of the Corps on flooding, particularly to the area along the Big Sioux River. I'm excited to see in the President's budget that we've got a new start for a study to take a look at the core project that exists there and see if we can improve it. Understand that putting a dirt berm across I-29 is probably not the best solution we could come up with. It was what they could back in the 70s. But so our commitment to you is we're excited to see this is a known problem, and we're committed to working with you to solving this.
Yeah, look, there was a beautiful residential district there called McCook Lake. And basically what this did was to divert the water, and it diverted it right through that residential district. There's a better way to do it. And we'll look forward to working with you to see that we find the appropriate plans so that when this happens again in the future, and it will, that those types of flooding conditions are diverted so that there is less damage to public property and infrastructure in that region. Thank you, sir. Assistant Secretary Cameron, first of all, I want to thank you for being here today. As you know, Congress has authorized the Bureau of Reclamation to design and construct rural water supply projects. These projects are intended to deliver potable water to rural communities in western states. To advance large-scale water projects, two types of federal authorization are required. First, the authority to conduct a feasibility study and the authority to construct the project. There are 3 regional water organizations in South Dakota are currently seeking congressional authorization to conduct feasibility studies. If these entities receive the necessary authorizations, will the Bureau of Reclamation have the capacity to promptly initiate and complete these studies?
Thank you for that question, Senator. We are committed to working with those communities to help them figure out how we can proceed with feasibility studies. And in the event that Congress authorizes the work, we will find a path to advance that activity.
In a timely fashion?
Yes, sir, given the availability of resources.
Okay, I noticed that the budget is not the best this year. It means that if we can get some money in there for that purpose, we'll get her done.
Happy to work with you on that, sir. I point out, you mentioned tribes earlier. We're prioritizing rural water projects that have some connection to tribes as well inside the president's budget, given our trust responsibility to tribes. And often there are Indian water rights settlements as Congress has passed that we're trying to implement.
That's part of the projects that we've got going on, so I look forward to working with you to accomplish it this year. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Merkley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As you can see, we're dashing in and out of many different hearings this morning, so I really appreciate the chance to come and ask a couple of questions. And I wanted to start, Mr. Forsgren, about the Coal Rivers hatchery. Now, Coal Rivers sounds like Coal Rivers sounds like a name of a river, but actually a name of a person for a hatchery that's on the Rogue River, one of the most extraordinary rivers in the world. This hatchery provides fish for not just the Rogue River, but for lakes, for the Umpqua River. It is like incredibly important, and we've had huge cooperation with the Army Corps in working on it. But even with that, it seems like progress is very slow, as though study after study gets completed, yet the actual implementation of the restoration is proceeding way too slowly. I want to know if the Corps fully understands how important this hatchery is dedicated to its rehabilitation. The supply of clean water is essential. We've took quite a bit of work just to get a steady supply of electricity to this site. Let me stop there and just say, are you familiar with the project, and are you all in on helping us restore this hatchery?
Senator, I must admit I am familiar only at the, I'll call it 60,000 foot level as to the project. I'll defer to General Graham on more specifics on that particular project. I don't want to tell you wrong.
So, Senator, we understand the importance of that hatchery, and Oregon's running it for us. We've got money, I think it was in FY24 to fix the roof, but we know it has a failed water supply, still challenges with the transformer, and we will continue to push, make our best technical recommendations for the budget packages to make those fixes.
So the Portland District has identified significant capacity, as they refer to it as capability, to support going more aggressively to attack the challenges at this hatchery. I mean, years of it being a priority. You mentioned a roof. Like, it's a complete rebuild. Even the challenge of the water not being properly supplied and filtered, causing the death of a number of the hatchery projects. And it's like, have we gotten to the point that we can't even figure out how to get clean water, steady electricity, steady filtering? So what would the Army Corps be able to do if Congress were to appropriate full capability for this project, given the Portland District is telling us they have that capability?
I will put some context over, and then I'm going to let General Graham give the specifics. Capabilities are always done in the context of the totality of the budget and the resources and the needs in a given district, in a given division, and nationwide. And so, yes, the Corps may have, on paper, have the capacity to do this or that, if that as a complete focus on that project, to the exchange of other, to the detriment of other projects in the same region. So it's really to say that a district has capacity is always a little bit of an unfair thing, because it has to take into account the totality of the program.
Because of my shortage of time, I'll just note, here's the deal. When these dams were built, a promise was made to everyone that the Corps would make sure that these hatcheries provided the fish that could not go upriver to spawn. That promise is being broken. It is extremely important that be understood and that promise be upheld. And that means we've got to get the clean water not just studied, but supplied. We've got to get the filtering equipment not just thought about, but rebuilt, and so forth. I'm down to 20 seconds, so I'm going to switch gears to Scoggins Dam. Last month, my office was noted after 20 years of planning, the Bureau of Reclamation made the decision to rescope and downsize the planned structural reconstruction of the dam safety project at Scoggins Dam. Why is this scary to everyone? Because we are reaching the point in that several hundred-year cycle where a major earthquake occurs, the big one if you will, and that dam and releasing the water out of it would flood down that valley and wipe out urban areas. And yet, after 20 years of investment in planning, we are hearing that the goal of strengthening that dam to prevent that type of catastrophe is being abandoned. Why?
Senator, I'll have to look at the particulars there. I can tell you more broadly that we're committed to dam safety around the nation, and we're pleased that the Congress still has provided some funds for the bipartisan infrastructure law to spend money on dam safety in addition to what's in the President's budget. But I'll have to get back to you on the particulars of that, sir.
Were the partners who used the dam to supply water consulted on the factors that went into this decision?
I'm not prepared to answer that question. I just don't have the information at hand, but I will get back to you, sir, on that.
The answer is they were not. Can you commit to ensuring that the Bureau will work with the community on a path forward?
I can absolutely commit to that, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, not seeing any of my colleagues across the aisle, I have one more question if you have time for it.
Go ahead.
So I wanted to address the challenge in the Klamath Basin. It's been plagued by drought for many years. Water is precious in the basin and vital to the survival of the community. The stakeholders have all come together to support each other in a whole variety of projects. One of those projects was to install sensors. They're referred to as SCADA sensors along the Klamath project to allow real-time water evaluation in order to do real-time water management. This was passed into law in March 2022. The sensors have not been installed. Can anyone give me a sense of when this project is going to be completed?
I'm not prepared to give you a timeline right now, Senator. I will say we are aware of that issue with the SCADA sensors and believe the funding is available to move ahead. But I'd be happy to provide a schedule for you after the hearing.
Thank you. If you'll commit to briefing me and my staff, I'd certainly appreciate it.
Absolutely, sir.
I'll tell you, folks go, listen, that $5 million is written into law. This first phase of this is putting sensors on poles that stick in bodies of water. How is it we seem to go years unable to get a project funded, it's funded, but nothing happens? And that is really frustrating. We're only a few months into this administration, but maybe the new team can get this done.
We'll look into it, and we'll look forward to briefing you and your staff on a path forward, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, welcome to the committee. I want to start by first focusing on the Sioux Locks, a project of national significance. Simply put, an unscheduled outage of the Poe Lock, which is the largest lock at the Sioux, would devastate the economy, harm our manufacturing sector, and jeopardize national security. To put things into perspective, just a 6-month unscheduled outage at the Sioux would result in an estimated 11 million jobs lost and 1.1 trillion hit to the economy. I think that's a classic definition of critical infrastructure. The bottom line is we need a second Poe Lock to alleviate the risk, and I've been leading the charge with a lot of my colleagues for quite some time. Most recently, I led a bipartisan and bicameral letter advocating for the inclusion of SULOC's funding in the most recent Army Corps work plan and budget request. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for answering that call. Crucially, the $264 million included in the work plan will allow for the award of all remaining construction contracts, which is a big deal. And the budget request matches the project's full work capability for this fiscal year, something that I'm going to work to ensure makes it into the final funding bill. But looking ahead, I'm going to be doing everything in my power to see that this critical project actually gets completed. I think we're on a good track, but we always got to keep the eye on the ball. And so that's my question to you, Secretary of Forsgren and General Graham. If you could let me know I can count on you to make sure we get this thing across the finish line and make sure I continue to have your focus.
Senator, yes is the short answer. The longer answer is the President is committed to maintaining the integrity of the inland waterway and national lock system. It is, as you so articulately laid out, it is the backbone of the economy of this country, and we cannot afford, as a nation, to let that happen. And I commit, we will be working forward, looking for ways forward.
Great.
To enhance that system.
I appreciate that, General.
And Senator Peters, absolutely, it was great to see the funding in the work plan allowing us to hit those last three options. And to Chairman Kennedy, that's how we safely deliver quality projects on schedule within budget, is we keep the efficient funding flowing, and then we're never going to get better prices than what we had locked in to finish those last three options up at the Sioux. I'm heading up there in a few weeks to make sure that there are no surprises up there, and that the team on the ground has everything they need to continue to deliver, and I think we're on track for 2030, which is exciting.
Great. Good to hear. Good to have you back up there soon as well. Speaking of the Sioux, I also hope that both of you will work with me to establish a special salary rate table for Sioux Lock's operational and maintenance positions. I think both of you understand the challenge of getting folks there. The reliability of the Sioux Lock's complex is going to hinge on those workers, and for a variety of reasons, it is very challenging. So to both of you, again, can I count on your help to make sure we have adequate staffing for the facility as it operates?
Senator Peters, absolutely. That wonderful investment to make sure that this key piece of infrastructure, as you laid out, will only serve the public well if we have the right staff there. And based on kind of some irregularities, I'll call it, in kind of how the pay model works, getting the special salary rate through will allow us to pay our staff what we believe they're worth. And so you have our commitment.
Great. Appreciate that, Secretary. I appreciate that. Thank you. Next, I want to talk to you about the importance of the Brandon Road Interbasin project. As you know, invasive big head and silver carp pose truly an unprecedented risk to the Great Lakes, which together support a $7 billion fishing industry, a $16 billion boating industry, and roughly about $6 trillion in regional the economy. At present, the electric dispersal barriers in the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal represent the sole structural measure to deter invasive carp from reaching Lake Michigan. Were this to remain our primary line of defense against the steady advance of this invasive carp, it would only be a matter of time before the big head and silver carp establish themselves in the Great Lakes, decimating the ecosystem or fishing or boating, recreational industries as well. The Brandon Road project is a solution to this problem, and it'll employ the precise measures necessary to halt the spread of carp before they reach the Great Lakes. I think this project is nothing short of critical to the lasting health of the Great Lakes. And as both of you know, I think time is of the essence as well. So my question for both of you, again, similar. Can I count on you to work with me and my colleagues here in Congress, as well as both the states of Michigan and Illinois, to keep this project moving in the right direction? It's been a project for years in the making, but again, time is of the essence, and your forceful assistance is necessary.
Senator, I have the luxury in this particular instance of being able to quote the President directly on it, and that is he's fully committed to that project. I know he and your governor worked very closely on that project, and you might guess my direction vis-a-vis that project is to see that happens.
Right.
We got great help from, as was mentioned, the President and the governor. We were able to get the real estate secured that we need. We released Contract 1A, which is the leading edge bubbler of this multi-tiered defense. And so that will be the start of fish deterrence. And so that's exciting to see that contract on the streets.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you both. Thank
And
you, Mr.
Senator, if I could add,
Oh,
the
yes.
Interior Department is also actively involved with Asian Carp in supporting the Corps and their work there. So it's not the Bureau of Reclamation, but our Geological Survey and the Fish and Wildlife Service are both actively involved.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've got a few questions, gentlemen. Let me start with you, Mr. Secretary. I'm trying to understand how you and all of you in OMB are thinking here. Where does the money come from for the Inland Waterways Trust Fund?
Senator, it's principally raised by a tax on the diesel fuel used in the tug and barge industry.
Yeah. Do you know the balance in that account off the top of your head?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'll be happy to provide that to you for the record.
Okay.
Exactly, but it is not insignificant.
I'm sorry?
The balance is not insignificant.
Okay. The proposed budget proposes not to spend it. Why would we? It can't be used for anything else. Why would we not spend it?
Sir, well, first of all, most of the needs that and I'm going to kind of back up with the Corps' capabilities. Most of the needs that we were currently capable of using that trust fund for were moved forward into the 25 spending plan. So a lot of that were taken care. A lot of those projects were funded in 25 pretty close to their full capabilities in the interim future. And it also, the advantage of the trust funds is that they're designed to be for monies to be raised to used, including out years, and over a longer period of time. So, we moved the funds forward into 25 for most of the projects that were currently ongoing, and then the projects, there were balances left that will be used in future years to fund projects as they come up and the Corps' capability come available.
So, Mr. Secretary, you're saying you don't need the money right now?
No, sir, we're going to need the money very soon.
I'm talking about right now. It's a timing issue?
I would say largely, sir, yes. Could we always use some, what we don't want to do is get into a situation where we're trying to spend money just because it's about to expire.
Agreed.
We'd rather fund it as the projects need it as they go forward.
Where's the money come from for the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund?
Sir, it's a value-based user fee that is charged against all cargoes entering or exiting the United States.
Okay. It's got some money in it, does it?
It does. And again, to be used over time.
Right. This proposed budget only proposes using $1.7 billion, is that right?
Yes, sir.
That's below the mark that we set, is it not?
Yes, sir.
How come?
Again, more of a timing issue. Some things were moved forward. Others, the president did put a focus on what were principal federal responsibilities, which is the maintenance and dredging of federal channels. And so, again, the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund is to be used over time for those projects.
Okay. Well, nobody's thinking about using this money for something else, are they?
No, sir.
Okay. General, I want to ask you a question about bringing these projects in on budget and on time. I know you said it was engineering. We've got to get the engineering right, project management right, team right. Let me give you an example. I'm not going to beat this to death, but and I'm just picking a project. We've got a lot of projects in Louisiana, just like Alaska has a lot of projects. Everybody has a lot of projects. But the Inland Harbor Navigation Canal in New Orleans. 10 years ago, we projected it would cost about $951 million. Now the cost is up to about $4.7 billion. And the court says it will take 14 years. I mean, I understand inflation, but why? And I'm using this as an example.
So Senator, the Inner Harbor Navigation Canal down there, where the intercoastal waterway bisects and gets across and up onto the Mississippi River, is absolutely key. And you know the history that we've had on multiple lawsuits and injunctions over the years. A lot of it built from the lack of trust from the local communities, particularly the lower Ninth Ward.
I know.
So that cost estimate, and for everybody who's listening, that IHNC is also part of the flood protection for the greater New Orleans area, the river-facing gates. So it's imperative that we get this right. And what I told the district to do is to make sure that they have put in their cost estimates the risks associated. Most of those risks are most of those risks are elements of not having local support to build this. We want to get a team together.
How do you quantify that?
So that's what we owe you. You take a risk that it's going to get delayed, and then you try your best to put money associated with that would get delayed. So we would have loved to have built this thing for less than $1 billion 10 years ago, but the court cases have prevented us from doing that. The lack of trust from the citizens of the lower Ninth Ward have prevented us from doing that. So we're trying to build that trust so that we don't end up in this infinite loop of litigation.
I got it. All right, Senator Murkowski's here. I want to ask you one more question. And you're well aware of all this. For whatever reason, sea levels are rising. Our land in South Louisiana is sinking. Part of that is because over time, sediment becomes more and more compacted. Where did that sediment come from? That sediment came from the Mississippi River, which used to overflow, which was a blessing and a curse. But our Corps did an extraordinary job at our request of levying the Mississippi River. We weighed the cost and the benefit and said the right thing to do here is to levy the river. Well, that obviously stopped the sediment. Okay? And I'm not suggesting we take the levees down, by the way. What do we do? We're not going to take the levees down. The land's sinking. There's no new sediment coming in. The sediment's becoming more compacted, and the sea levels are rising. What would you do if you were king for a day? General, let me start with you, and then I'll ask the secretary.
Sure. Chairman Kennedy, so some of the projects are that we have a tremendous amount of non-structural projects going on in South Louisiana.
And I'm not asking you to comment on any particular project. I get all the politics and the wailing and the national gnashing of teeth, right, and everybody's bowels are in an uproar over which one's the best one. I get that. I'm just asking you, what approach should we take?
So raising homes to deal with sea level rise coming up and the land sinking, that non-structural approach is a tool that we're starting to execute at scale in southern Louisiana. What we're also taking a look at is supporting the state of Louisiana in whatever settlement diversion paths that it's choosing to take. They had applied for a permit and
do you think
granted it.
Settlement diversion works?
In some instances, I believe it does. It has to be done very carefully. And anytime we move the Mississippi River off from where it's going to someplace else, that's going to have tremendous forces. And so we have to take a look at that mindfully. But I believe we have the engineering expertise, and working in conjunction with the state, I believe that we can use that tool effectively.
Now, do you, on this sediment diversion, Are you saying we should do it in small amounts?
Pilot
Or
projects,
larger amounts, or does that matter?
I think pilot projects to prove that we know what we think we know are always wise.
So you're thinking of a pilot project?
I think those,
We've done some.
we have done some.
We don't have enough pilots?
I'd owe you a better, more detailed answer on that.
Okay. What do you think, Mr. Secretary?
Senator, I certainly agree that the Corps' expertise in moving and doing sediment projects and doing a traditional Corps approach will be one of the tools that has to happen. I think we need to think about the other side of some of the stuff the Corps does, and that's using the regulatory program to create some incentives for the private sector to do positive things.
For example?
I'll use a perfect example in South Louisiana. Right now, in the 404 program, we cannot give a mitigation bank credit for preventing subsidence losses of wetlands. Those coastal wetlands losses are amounting to about the only losses nationally in wetlands resources. But we don't have a mechanism now between, I don't think it's law, it's really regulation, that would allow someone, for example, there are several large landowners down there that at a relatively low cost, a few $1 million, could, barrier the breaches that have been into the coastal wetlands for a long time, and that would stop some of the saltwater incursion, which accelerates the wetlands losses and some of the subsidence. But if they could sell credits for 404 purposes for elsewhere in Louisiana, that would provide the economic incentive for doing that. But we can do it, so now you've got people in South Louisiana going up to North Louisiana to buy credits, to do development.
Gotcha.
There's a mismatch. We need to find some more creative ways to use the regulatory system in a positive manner to help.
Okay. I want to sit down. We'll sit down and talk about that.
Absolutely, Senator.
Thank you for your creative thinking. I want to be sure I understand you, General. You think diversion works?
I believe there's cases where it can be part of the solution. Yes.
You think it can work in South Louisiana?
Yes.
Okay. Senator.
Love these conversations. This is why the Corps is so important. Quite honestly, we need really smart people, really good engineers to figure out some of these challenges, whether it is what you're facing down there in Louisiana with the loss of your wetlands and the subsidence and all of that. We got other problems up north that come about through coastal erosion, river erosion, the permafrost melting. We've got subsidence there. It's just a different kind. But at the end of the day, we're all looking to the Corps for many of these answers. And like your situation in Louisiana, there is no small project that I can find in the state of Alaska. The thing that should be simple is not simple. These are legacy projects. And whether it's Lowell Point, most people in America will never hear of Lowell Creek Tunnel and why it's important, but it's going to save a little community like Seward. But honest to God, it's 20 years, maybe more in the making. I'm not even going to count the dollars. But that's not what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about the Port of Nome, because I'm worried that as we're looking at your budget, what we're talking about here today, the projects that are important to Alaska and Louisiana, the amount of folks that we've got at the Corps, coupled with the decrease in the budget, problems like we're facing in Juneau with the Jokelop. That is a Norwegian term for glacial outburst flooding, which just about on August 7th of each year, the people of Juneau are visited by a massive flood where a glacier rises up because you've got so much volume under this basin, floods the river, floods the area. We need some smart engineering solutions, and it's not going to get any cheaper. To the Port of Nome. Every single time, whether it's in public hearing like this or in private conversations in my office, the Corps has assured me that the Port of Nome is a priority project. They realize that the United States of America needs a deep water port, given Nome's strategic advantage where it's sitting right up there, right directly across from Russia, all of the traffic that we're seeing coming through the Bering Straits. Nobody disagrees that this is a significant port. And yet when I look at the budget request, I'm just confused. I'm just confused because you've got a port that is not getting any cheaper. We all recognize that. The problem is that when you don't have adequate funding in the beginning, the costs are only going to increase. I'm hoping, Mr. Forsgren, that you're going to have some creative ways that you can share with me today about either funding streams or perhaps it's on the regulatory side to help lessen the burden. But when you've got short construction season, when you've got logistical challenges for places that are not contiguous to the rest of the United States, you know the challenges that we have. First question, and I hope I know the answer to this, is the Port of Nome a priority for the U.S. Army Corps?
Yes, Senator.
Okay.
The fact that it was included for funding specifically by name demonstrates that commitment.
And I think that that's good, and I take that for what it is. But I'm concerned that when you don't include meaningful funding, basically there's $3 million here, it looks to me that this is, what we're talking about is a contingency amount for a prior year's funding rather than looking at the project, evaluating the need, and putting the commitment behind it. How am I supposed to read the commitment from the Corps about a project like this with a budget like this? And I know you anticipated that question.
I did, but that doesn't make the answer any easier.
No, it doesn't, because it defies a rational explanation, in my view.
Senator, all I can say is the Port of Nome is a commitment, is a project that the administration is committed to. And there have been a number of challenges at the Port of Nome, contracting and others, that have put us in a place where the exact level of resources that we thought we could execute in the short term is uncertain. And so, yeah, and I'll defer.
So, Senator, we're working through the solicitation right now and the bids and working to see if we can get to an award. And that's with the $250 million that we have on hand. The $3 million in 26 we would use to advance the next feature, the engineering for the next feature, that's the East Breakwater. So we are moving that forward. The key is getting to an award this year for the causeway extension. And I'm still, that's our goal, but we're not quite there yet.
So the last time we talked about this, we've had many, many, many conversations about this. The effort was going to be to see if you couldn't attract more interest from outside contractors. I'm told that has happened. I'm told that we're further along with getting a successful bid out there. But what you're both sharing with me today by body language and words is not very comforting, actually.
We're further along, certainly, Senator. This is still all part of the acquisition process. Talked to the district yesterday, and they're optimistic.
And define optimistic. Does that mean that we get through the bid process this summer?
That's what they're optimistic about, yes.
And do we actually do anything physical this year?
Moving rock this year, Senator, I owe you an answer on that. As you said, the construction season's short. And I can't remember offhand the sequence of buying rock. So I owe you an answer on that.
I think you need to talk to your folks in Alaska. I'm sure you have. The assurance that I got was that we were going to be seeing physical activity this year. And we know what happens in Nome after October when the ice comes in and everything, all work effectively stops. So what you're sharing with me is we're going to be better off on paper. You're going to try to move some rock, but I just don't want one stack moved from one corner to another. This is either stop calling it a priority project and just acknowledge that the Corps and the administration is saying that the Arctic is no longer significant, and I refuse to accept that for an answer. Or put some direction to this in a way that is aggressive, that is meaningful, and is responsive to what we're seeing 57 miles across the water in Russia. I think we're an embarrassment when we say one thing and we simply do not move to facilitate it in a way that could be recognized as positive. So I don't mean to be lectury, but I am so frustrated with where we are on Port of Nome right now. I know you've got a lot of other projects in Alaska that we're working on. We go through our checklist all the time. We're making some good progress there. Thank you. We need to deal with Juneau. We need to deal with Lowell Point. We need to deal with Elam. We need to do all this stuff. But in the meantime, the Arctic is not waiting. Right now, there's more interest in the administration with Greenland for an Arctic port. That's inexcusable. We have Alaska, right? Okay. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. We'll meet again. We'll talk some more. The hearing record will remain open for a week. My colleagues can submit additional information if they would like. Thank you for being here today. If you get questions, please respond to them in a reasonable amount of time, both for this hearing and generally. Thank you for coming. We'll talk again. We're probably going to have to start over with this budget, gentlemen. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. It's just not realistic, and I support a lot of what Russ and my friends at OMB are doing. But I just know the appetite for the work that you all do and the necessity of it. So I'm just being realistic. Thank you for coming. Take the rest of the day off.